Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's Dina Kalmeta here with the DAC Report. And for today's news, I wanted to bring you guys an update concerning some recent activity in the Middle East between the United States and Iran. We're also going to talk about Russia and Ukraine and these increased tensions that we keep hearing about in regards to Russia and NATO. So definitely some topics to unpack. So if you're ready, let's get started. So what we know right now is that the United States in the last couple of days has begun strikes on Iran. Confirmation of the strikes came after Iranian media reported explosions in the country's south. President Trump said the attacks were coming and that they are in retaliation for Iran firing on commercial vessels in the Strait. President Trump said that the ceasefire is over and that the U.S. may sort out Iran's nuclear issue without a deal, and he said that there was not a thing that Iran could do to stop more attacks from the U.S. He did vow to de-nuke the country. Iran has responded by threatening to close the strait in response to any U.S. strikes. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard also said it targeted 85 U.S. military sites in Bahrain and Kuwait. It described the U.S. attacks as a ceasefire violation. And speaking at the NATO summit in Turkey this week, President Trump said that he was number one on Iran's unaliving list. Now, the Times of Israel is reporting that the U.S. has begun returning military refueling planes to the Middle East amid the mounting escalation with Iran. The refueling planes had been evacuated from the region to Europe in recent weeks when tensions between the sides have seemed to diminish upon the signing of a memorandum of understanding to permanently end the U.S.-Israel war against Iran. In the meantime, Iran has stated that they fired 10 ballistic missiles on Jordan's military base. Jordan said earlier that it had intercepted 8 missiles launched from Iran with no casualties or damage as of the reporting of this show. The Revolutionary Guard says that U.S. bases in the region will be targeted if U.S. aggression is repeated. The United States had reportedly struck strategic railway bridges serving as part of key transportation corridors linking Iran with China and Russia. Fox News is reporting that the Gulf Cooperation strongly condemned Iranian attacks targeting commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and in the waters of the GCC member states, calling the strikes a threat to international security and global energy supplies. In the meantime, dozens of Iranian drones and missiles have been intercepted by U.S. and partner forces since last night. An official confirmed earlier with ABC News that dozens of Iranian drones and missiles had been taken down as Iran and the U.S. exchange strikes after President Trump declared the ceasefire all but over. It's also being reported by Fox News that commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz is operating under a severe threat warning after a string of Iranian-linked maritime attacks and fresh reporting of mine risks, navigation interference, and continued IRGC pressure on vessels moving through one of the world's most critical energy choke points. Now, it's also being reported that Iranian officials have asserted that U.S. strikes have caused shrapnel and debris to strike the perimeter of the Bushehr nuclear plant in southern Iran. The claims have heightened concerns about potential risk to the facility, though specific details on damage remain limited. World Israel News is reporting that Israel is seeking President Trump's approval to carry out strikes in Iran, according to CAN News. Israeli officials assess that exchanges of fire between Iran and the U.S. are expected to continue in the coming days. Meanwhile, the New York Post reported on Thursday, citing Israeli sources, that Israel is prepared to participate in future U.S. military operations against Iran if requested by Washington. In the meantime, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Trump looks after America, I look after Israel. Relations between Jerusalem and Washington, alongside regional security tensions, took center stage in an interview given by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu dismissed claims regarding the nature of U.S. President Donald Trump's actions, clarifying that the president is not acting contrary to his statements. The prime minister said that he looks after America's interests and I look after Israel's interests, and I am not ashamed to speak my mind. Netanyahu elaborated on diplomatic matters raised during joint discussions, noting that when he holds specific positions regarding Turkey and the conduct of President Erdogan, he presents them directly. He added that this also applies to the broader security situation across the northern border, noting in reference to the security zone in southern Lebanon. The prime minister said, "We must protect the region." He also stressed that the dialogue between him and President Trump is conducted with complete openness, emphasizing his deep appreciation for American policy. He said, "Even if there are disagreements on certain matters, I greatly appreciate his support. I do not think there has ever been a president so supportive of Israel in our history." Now, the Jerusalem Post is reporting that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dismantled Israel's relationship with the United States and has become a burden to U.S. President Donald Trump. Lieberman said that President Trump wants to distance himself from Netanyahu. The relationship has become a burden, and it is already hurting him in the upcoming U.S. midterm elections. Who is Lieberman? Lieberman has served in key security and diplomatic positions in previous governments, including as defense minister, foreign minister, and finance minister in Israel. He has been in the political sphere for over 3 decades. And of course, he has been open about his aim of becoming prime minister and is a fierce critic of Netanyahu and his government. But I don't know, do you guys see a rift between President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, in the meantime, Andy Burnham, likely the next British PM, says that the UK must pressure Israel and restrict arms sales. He said it's completely unacceptable that innocent Palestinians, including children, continue to be unalived, that there's still a humanitarian crisis with too little aid getting in, and that the Israeli military continues to expand the area it controls in Gaza. We've got to do more to put pressure on the Israeli government. So something very interesting to note is that in the book of Zechariah, chapter 12, verse 3, God specifically says that Jerusalem will become a cup of trembling and a burdensome stone for all the nations round about. Are we not seeing that right now? And something else to note, in the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 2, God specifically says that he's going to gather all the nations together that have parted his land. All the nations together. Now, that does not exclude the United States, because eventually every single nation, according to scripture, is going to turn against Israel. Now, we're seeing kind of that right now, but we have not seen Israel being parted, but we do keep hearing about a two-state solution in recent years. I think that the parting of the land, so to speak, will be part of the peace covenant in Daniel 9:27, in which the Antichrist will confirm. And again, that hasn't happened yet. It happens after the rapture, and it actually gets the clock ticking for the 7-year tribulation period. And obviously, we're not in the tribulation period yet. So definitely some very interesting news this week. But I would like to switch gears and talk about what happened at the NATO summit and also these increased tensions between Russia and NATO. So let's start with what happened at the NATO summit. President Trump hauntingly predicted his violent unaliving. He declared at the NATO summit in Turkey that they, Iran, want to take out the U.S. leader, me. He said, "I'm on every list." And so far, I've been a little bit lucky, but that maybe doesn't last very long because that's the way it goes. His warning came as hardline lawmakers in Iran openly called for missiles to be fired at his location at the summit. And earlier this week, mourners of the Ayatollah placed a bounty on the president. The president again brought up his demise during a press conference alongside Marco Rubio and his other top cabinet officials. While discussing Iran's leadership, the president stated in regards to the prior leadership, they're gone now. They have another set of leaders. They may be gone. Who knows? And you know what? I may be gone too because I'm the number one target. It's out all over the place. I'm the number one. So the president is speaking death over his life, you guys. Now, I don't care if you like the man or not. We still got to pray for him. He needs a lot of prayer right now. But it goes on to say that President Trump on Tuesday resurrected his push for the U.S. to acquire Greenland. He said the island territory should be controlled by the United States. In a bilateral meeting with the Turkish President Erdogan on Tuesday, Trump vented that Europe's refusal to go along with his expansionist desire is what hurt his relationship with NATO. He said because Greenland doesn't help Denmark, Denmark doesn't spend money to really help Greenland, but it's an important part for the United States. Now, it's also been suggested that President Trump might draw down the military presence, describing himself as very disappointed with NATO. He further suggested that he wouldn't have attended the NATO summit if it weren't held in Turkey, describing Erdogan as a friend and a very strong leader. Now, as we know, Erdogan and Netanyahu do not see eye to eye. But he goes on to say, the president, well, we're going to see. I was very disappointed with NATO, and frankly, if it weren't held in Turkey, where my friend happens to be a very strong leader, a very strong person, it's possible that I wouldn't have attended. I felt I had to attend because of the fact that I know he's gone all out. It was a big thing to have NATO come to Turkey or any place else. But we weren't treated well because we did something in Iran. We don't need anybody's help, the president said. I didn't even want their help. But before I asked, they said they wouldn't be there. And we've invested trillions of dollars in NATO. Why, he asked? To protect European countries and others, Canada, etc. But to protect people in countries from, generally speaking, it used to be the Soviet Union, now it's Russia, and I say that's fine. But you'd think that they'd be very willing to do something to help us, and they really weren't. In the case of the United Kingdom, the prime minister, I guess he's no longer there, the president said, maybe because of this. It was a very unpopular thing he did. He said, no, we'll help after the war is over. I said, I don't need that kind of help. We didn't need any help at all. And in a way, I was testing people. I was testing to see whether or not they'd be there because I've long said that we'd help them, but I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. And Italy turned us down, Germany turned us down, and France turned us down. And it's okay. But you know, why are we spending hundreds of billions of dollars and they're not there for us? We've always been there for them. Definitely some very serious words coming out of the president. And that piece came from the Gateway Pundit. But to move along to Russia, tensions between Russia, Ukraine, and the West are spiking as barrages hit Kyiv, and Kyiv has ramped up long-range drone strikes deep inside Russian territory, leading to widespread domestic fuel shortages in Russia. And actually, Ukraine hit 21 Russian ships within 72 hours. Now, what's happening with Russia and NATO? At the NATO summit, NATO leaders reaffirmed that an attack on one is an attack on all, and that's Article 5. And they named Russia as a long-term threat to Euro-Atlantic security. They also announced over $50 billion in new defense procurements and pledged $70 billion in military aid, equipment, and training for Ukraine in 2026. Now, Russia strongly condemned NATO's decisions. The Russian Foreign Ministry accused NATO of militarizing Europe and preparing for armed conflict with Russia, warning that the summit's decisions could have catastrophic consequences. Reuters is reporting that Putin may escalate the Ukrainian war. Sources close to the Kremlin told Reuters there is a high probability of escalation in coming months, with Putin reportedly rejecting compromise and wanting control of the rest of Donbass. The report also says that Russian military voices have been discussing possible escalation involving European NATO-linked targets. There are also warnings from NATO's eastern flank that Russia may attempt some type of provocation against Poland or the Baltic state to test NATO's unity. The Guardian reported that these warnings are about possible hybrid-style action drones, missiles, or signaling, not necessarily a full-scale attack, as far as we know. The AP has reported that the Ukrainian drones struck Russian oil facilities and sent tankers on fire in the Sea of Azov, where Russia has intensified missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian cities. So in plain English, Russia and NATO are not officially at war, but the situation is getting more dangerous. NATO is strengthening its defense posture. Russia is warning against it. Ukraine is striking deeper into Russian territory, and Europe is preparing for the possibility that Russia may test NATO through a limited provocation. Now, to bring in China just briefly, the US and its allies have continuously countered non traditional threats from Moscow and Beijing, including cyber attacks, undersea cable cutting, and geopolitical maneuvering in Latin America and the Balkans. The US also regularly challenges both nations through sanctions enforcement and maritime freedom of navigation operations. And of course, we know that the United States is aligning with Taiwan in regards to China's aggressive moves against Taiwan. China and Russia are deepening their strategic partnership, which includes their joint military drills and coordinated bomber patrols over the Sea of Japan. The U.S. Department of Defense officially views China as its primary pacing threat, while Russia is regarded as an acute state threat. And NATO feels the same way in regards to Russia. So, in conclusion, the danger right now may not be that we're in a direct war with Russia or China, so to speak, but that Iran was the spark that stretched America thin militarily. Because right now, you guys, we're on multiple fronts. We're in the Middle East, we're in Europe, we're in the Indo-Pacific. So Russia is benefiting from the distraction, China is watching the strain, and the world, unfortunately, is moving dangerously close to a miscalculation. So there could be no denying right now that we are absolutely in the season of wars and rumors of wars. But those are your headlines for today. I'd love to get your thoughts. What do you guys think about what's happening in the Middle East? What about what happened at the NATO summit? Let me know in the comments. Also, when you have a free moment, come and visit us on our new website at thedacreport.com. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.